You have tried to explain yourself using personality tests, and they helped for a while. They gave you language for being introverted, for being intuitive, for processing the world differently than most people around you. But there has always been something the test could not touch, the feeling that your interior life is not just different. It is structured like a journey you did not choose but cannot abandon. The sense that you are not living a single fixed identity but moving through territories that each demand something different from you. The hermit who must eventually speak, the helper who must learn to be helped, the observer who longs to be seen. If you have felt this, you are not fragmented, you are participating in something far older than personality psychology. Welcome to Power and Myth. What you are about to encounter is not another INFJ trait list. This is the INFJ Archetypes framework, a map of the 7 primary patterns that INFJs move through across a lifetime. Not categories to put yourself in, not stages to complete and leave behind. These are living territories you will enter, inhabit, leave, and return to. Sometimes you will live in one archetype for years. Sometimes you will shift between them in a single day. But once you know their names, once you understand their gifts and their shadows, you will never again feel you are wandering unmarked ground. You will recognize exactly where you are, and you will know what that territory is trying to teach you. The 7 archetypes are these: the seer, who perceives what others cannot and carries the exhausting gift of knowing too much too soon. The seeker, the pilgrim who senses there is something more and cannot rest until they find it. The wounded healer, whose deepest pain becomes the source of their capacity to help others. The hermit, who withdraws not from weakness but from the necessity of turning inward to find what the world needs. The shapeshifter, who wears many faces to survive in a world that does not speak their language. The exile, who exists permanently outside the circle, not rejected but never quite belonging. And the guardian of thresholds, the one who stands between worlds, helping others cross whilst remaining on the edge themselves. These are not metaphors borrowed from mythology and sprinkled on personality content. These are the actual patterns through which INFJ experience unfolds. The reason you have never heard them described this way before is that no other channel frames INFJ life as archetypal inheritance. This is what you own when you are here. This is the power and myth difference. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. You are 14 years old, and you have just realized that you know things about people they have not yet admitted to themselves. You watch your friend's parents interact at a dinner party, and you see the divorce before it happens. You feel your teacher's grief beneath her competent exterior. You perceive patterns in social dynamics that others seem blind to. This is your first encounter with the Seer, Cassandra's ancient curse, to know and not be believed. Most INFJs meet the Seer early. It arrives the first time you try to warn someone about something you have already watched unfold in your mind, and they look at you like you are strange. The Seer's gift is perception. The Seer's shadow is isolation, because once you begin seeing what others cannot, you also begin living in a timeline slightly ahead of everyone else. You are watching the film whilst they are still reading the synopsis. There is no way to explain this without sounding arrogant or unhinged. So you learn to stay quiet. You realize that your knowing is something you must carry alone. The Seer teaches you this. It is your first initiation into the loneliness that will follow you in different forms for the rest of your life. But the Seer is not where you stay, because at some point the knowing is not enough. You begin to feel that you are meant for something you have not yet found. There is a purpose out there, a place or a person or a calling that will finally make sense of why you experience the world the way you do. You become restless. Ordinary life feels like exile from a home you have never seen but somehow remember. This is the seeker, the pilgrim who cannot stop searching. The seeker does not arise because you are lost. It arises because you know with absolute certainty that arrival exists. Somewhere there is a life that fits. Somewhere there are people who speak your language. Somewhere there is work that uses everything you are instead of asking you to edit yourself down. And until you find it, you cannot rest. The seeker's gift is this relentless movement toward meaning. The seeker's shadow is the exhaustion of never quite arriving. Because even when you find what you were looking for, part of you is already wondering if there is something more. The seeker keeps you moving, but it also keeps you from ever feeling you have permission to stop. Here is where it becomes difficult to speak about, because what happens next is that life begins to break you in specific ways, and those breaks, those wounds that feel like they will end you, become the very thing that allows you to do the work you were born to do. This is the wounded healer. Chiron, the myth says. The centaur who could heal everyone except himself, the INFJ who absorbs others' pain, transmutes it, and offers it back as insight, comfort, or simply presence, but who cannot escape their own. The wounded healer does not emerge because you decide to help people. It emerges because your sensitivity, your capacity to feel what others feel, means you have been collecting wounds since childhood. Wounds of being too much and not enough. Wounds of being misunderstood, dismissed and used. Wounds of giving everything and receiving nothing. And at some point you realize that these wounds have taught you something. They have made you fluent in suffering. You can sit with someone's darkness because you have sat with your own. You can hold their contradictions because you are walking contradictions yourself. The gift of the wounded healer is profound empathy. The shadow is that you become so good at holding space for others that you forget you also need holding. You become the one everyone comes to, and you have no idea how to ask for what you give so freely. And this is when the hermit appears, not as an escape, as a necessity. Because at some point the weight of everyone else's needs becomes too much, and you must withdraw. You must go into your own depths and find what has been buried under years of performing, translating, shape-shifting to fit a world that was never built for you. The hermit is not antisocial. The hermit is the one who understands that solitude is not loneliness. It is the condition under which you can finally hear yourself think, under which you can integrate everything you have absorbed, under which you can remember who you are when no one is asking anything of you. The hermit carries a lantern in every myth, because the hermit goes into darkness not to hide but to find light, to bring back what the world needs but can only be discovered alone. The gift of the hermit is this capacity for deep interior work. The shadow is that withdrawal can become permanent, that you can become so comfortable in solitude that re-entering the world feels like a violence you cannot bear. The hermit teaches you that you need time alone, but it can also teach you to distrust the very connection you long for. And perhaps this is why the shapeshifter exists, because the world does not speak the language you speak. It does not value what you value. It does not move at the pace you move. And so you learn to shift, to translate, to become whatever is required in the moment, the helpful one, the competent one, the easy one. The shapeshifter is not deceit. It is survival. It is the INFJ's exhausting adaptability, the way you can read a room and become what it needs, the way you can mirror someone's energy to make them comfortable, the way you have a different version of yourself for every context, and none of them feel entirely real. The gift of the shapeshifter is this fluency in translation. You can move between worlds. You can speak to the artist and the analyst, the mystic and the pragmatist. You contain multitudes, and this makes you invaluable. The shadow is that you lose track of which face is actually yours. You become so good at adapting that you forget what you are when no one is watching. The shapeshifter teaches you flexibility. But it can also teach you that your true self is too strange, too much, too unmarketable to be allowed into the world unedited. This is how you become the exile, not through rejection, though rejection happens, but through the accumulated weight of never quite fitting, of being welcomed everywhere and belonging nowhere. The exile is the INFJ's structural loneliness, the understanding that you are permanently outside the circle, not because you have done anything wrong, but because the circle was never drawn to include people like you, people who feel too deeply, those who think too much, who cannot participate in small talk without feeling they are betraying something essential in themselves. The exile is the one who watches from the edge, who sees the warmth of the fire but knows they will always be slightly apart from it. The gift of the exile is clarity. When you are outside, you see patterns that those inside cannot see. You understand systems. You perceive what is broken in the culture because you have never been fully absorbed by it. The shadow is the bone-deep loneliness, the grief of watching others find their people whilst you remain the strange one, the one who is interesting but not quite safe, the one who is valued but not quite loved. The exile teaches you that you do not need to belong to everyone, but it can also convince you that you will never belong to anyone. And yet, there is one more archetype, the one that holds all the others together, the guardian of thresholds, the figure who stands at the edge between worlds and helps others cross, the INFJ who has walked through their own darkness and returned with a map, who has lived as seer and seeker and wounded healer and hermit and shapeshifter and exile, and who now understands that all of it was preparation. Preparation for this. To be the one who can stand in the liminal space, the space between what was and what will be, and guide others through. The guardian does not cross the threshold themselves. They remain on the edge. This is both their gift and their grief. They help others transform, but they do not get to arrive. They see others into new lives, new selves, new understandings, and then they return to the threshold to wait for the next person who needs passage. The gift of the guardian is this profound service, the knowledge that your life's work is to translate the mysteries for those who are ready to hear them. The shadow is that you can become so identified with being the guide that you forget you are also allowed to be the traveller, that you are also allowed to need help crossing. Here is what you must understand. These 7 archetypes are not a progression you complete. You do not start as the seer and end as the guardian and then retire, finished. You move through these territories your entire life. Sometimes in sequence, sometimes all at once. You wake up one morning living as the hermit, needing solitude and depth. By afternoon, something has shifted, and you are the shapeshifter again, adapting to survive a conversation that requires you to be someone you are not. By evening, you are the exile, watching others connect whilst you remain outside. And underneath all of it, the seer is still perceiving. The seeker is still searching. The wounded healer is still transmuting pain into gift. This is not fragmentation. This is the natural complexity of INFJ consciousness. You are not meant to live in one archetype. You are meant to know all 7, to recognize which territory you are in and what it is asking of you, to understand that each archetype has a gift you need and a shadow you must watch for, and to remember that you are not broken for moving between them. You are whole precisely because you contain them all. This is what we explore here at Power and Myth, not personality traits, not lists of things INFJs do, but the ancient patterns beneath modern personality, the archetypal inheritance that explains why you experience life the way you do, the recognition that you are not a collection of quirks, you are living inside a myth, and once you know which part of the myth you are currently inhabiting, everything changes. You stop trying to fix yourself, you start learning to navigate, you stop feeling lost, you start feeling located. You recognize that the loneliness of the exile is not a personal failure. It is the structure of the archetype itself. You understand that the shapeshifter's exhaustion is not weakness, it is the cost of translation. You see that the hermit's withdrawal is not avoidance, it is essential work. And you begin to trust that the territory you are in now is not where you will always be, that the INFJ life is a journey through all 7 archetypes, and that each one has something to teach you that you cannot learn anywhere else. So tell me, which archetype are you living right now? Are you the seer, exhausted by knowing too much, the seeker, restless and searching, the wounded healer, giving everything and receiving nothing, the hermit needing to withdraw, the shapeshifter translating between worlds, the exile watching from outside, or the guardian helping others cross whilst you remain at the threshold? Tell me in the comments. And if you want to continue exploring this territory, if you want to understand your archetypes more deeply, subscribe. You are part of something here. The Power and Myth community is not an audience. It is a gathering of those who have always known they were living inside a story. Until next time, find your power, know your myth,